Hey, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Design Details, Music Effect Design. I'm your host, Jordan Pittner from Phoenix, Arizona. And our goal is to just sort of demystify all things surrounding the marching arts. So today we've got a great guest, really excited to talk about what we're talking about today. We're going to discuss teaching the visual program in the virtual world or in the COVID world. So with us today is Mason Tanquary. Mason, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, man. Good. It's good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. I think it's been a few months now.
Yeah, seriously. COVID time is just like a weird time. I heard somebody refer to it as time soup the other day, so I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, that is definitely appropriate.
So, Mason, introduce yourself. Tell everybody what you're about as we get rolling here.
Yeah, like you said, my name is Mason Tanquary. I am a visual educator here in Arizona. I'm also a visual designer, so I write for a lot of different schools in the Valley and a couple other states as well in the country. I've also been involved in the drum corps activity with a couple of different drum corps for the past, I don't know, 5, 10 years. As a member 10 years ago, I started teaching about five. Also am a visual adjudicator, sorry, with different circuits like AZMBA or ABOTA. And also I've been doing some effects judging for winter guards with WGA's each circuit and stuff like that. So trying to, branch my visual education as much as possible to look at different things, whether it be adjudicating or teaching or designing, just trying to get, a full understanding of how the activity works from a visual standpoint.
It's cool, man. I, this question is kind of a little out of left field, but I don't think I've ever asked you this. How did you get started in the drill writing world? That always fascinates me how people like get their start. What was yours?
Well, my start actually I was teaching at Basha High School, and we went through a director change. And when that director change happened, went through a drill writer change, and I was just teaching there. And the band director came up and asked me, "Say, hey, what do you think about writing drill?" And I'm like, "I have no clue how to do that." He's like, "Oh man, you got this." I'm like, "All right, I'll give it a try." And ever since then, I'm like, "Oh, I love this." And it
Yeah.
takes a lot of time, but it's a lot of learning. Every year, I learned some new things. But that's how I got my chance. Basically, it was just one band director being like, "Hey, I think you can do this." And
Yeah.
from I just kind of spread on, continued to learn as much as I could about it.
It's cool, man. I mean, that's basically how I got my start as well. I think, a lot of people just
Yeah.
go through a weird change and suddenly something's thrust on you and here you are. So that's cool, man. Um, so, I reached out to you initially because I had seen you um, sort of talking about how you're wanting to uh, just offer students creative solutions basically in the environment we find ourselves in now, which I think for anybody who's well, I was going to say for freelancers, but really for anybody nowadays, it's kind of much needed, like virtual solutions. Tell me a little bit about what some of your ideas were when you're talking about like virtual content specifically, and what's the value of virtual content within the visual caption in this season?
Yeah, first, the value of virtual content, I think, is everything in the visual. Because if you think about it, students are probably playing their instruments from fifth grade, or at least have an understanding of music in general from fifth grade. A lot of people don't understand visual musicality or just simple body awareness until we start really actively talking about it. There's sports that will start to touch on it in terms of how to use your body in a certain way, but within this activity we have to use our body within a certain way, but also keep it in time and keep it in time with a whole bunch of people. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it. So like my plan with this, essentially something that I like to think about with virtual online, is creating a lot of those same skills of having awareness and timing through an online platform. And
Right.
the two big things to me are posture and timing. And so posture can mean a different whole bunch of different things. It doesn't mean like the robotic stand up, but it's just how you carry how you carry your body essentially. And so that translates into everything that you do, whether it is how you're walking from point A to point B, how you're going into an interview, how you're holding your instruments, or however you are dancing. Like posture is still super important there. Sorry about that, but that's pretty much it with me on those two things, is trying to make sure that the posture is good, and then timing, of course, we want to make sure the person A is the same as person B, and that we're understanding how to get from point A to point B as efficiently, as effectively as possible.
Yeah,
So that one's a little bit more difficult one on the virtual side, is making sure everyone's in time. But I feel like I found a couple interesting ways to kind of help clarify that, where they should feel pulls from and stuff like that.
that's cool. At Music Effect Design, Mike and I have been working on virtual like ensemble rehearsals. That's been kind of our our workshop thing for the last 2 months now. I guess it's been a real process. Do you mind sharing some of how you get timing built into your virtual program? Like, what's that look like for you?
Yeah, so it starts with making sure that the audio is coming from a consistent source.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is coming from the instructor, and everyone else is muted. I've learned that the hard way. Everyone's got to be muted, and it's
Right.
got to come from the instructor. Whatever. So like if they want to play metronome or play music, the best way has actually been music. That's been the best way for new students and older students to really connect with tempo, is through music, not through a metronome. Metronome is a little bit more difficult, a little bit more monotonous for them a little bit.
Yeah.
But music really helps to keep them engaged. And so then from then, when there's a clear, sense of tempo, now it's getting them to understand where they're getting the sensation of tempo from within their body. So
Mm.
if we're working on something simple as marking time, it's making sure that they are feeling the pulse within a specific part of their foot, whichever it is in your technique, whether it's the platform or the heel, making sure that they're feeling that right at the downbeat and not inconsistent from person to person.
That's cool. That's cool. Um, how many people do you focus on at a time in a virtual setting like that? Like, do you have, I've seen some people do like a huge wave of, looking at every single student. I've seen some do the opposite and just look at one. What's your tendency?
So what I do, and I've been lucky to have an awesome staff with me, and they
Cool.
come with me wherever I go. So I have about three other staff members as well as myself. So I'm kind of giving out the information, and I pre-plan everything that I say. I don't just like, oh, I'm going to talk about marking time. I actually have to think
Yeah.
about marking time and how I'm going to break it down, because I understand that there's kids that I'm not going to be able to see that have never marked time before, all the way to a
Right.
senior who's been marking time for probably 4 or 5 years. So I have a couple other staff members that I kind of have them just viewing and watching as much as they can, focusing on different people as I'm uh, trying to give general information. It's kind of like if football, kind of like going into zone defense. I have like
Cool.
a couple of staff members focusing on like a few kids, there's another focusing on this group of kids, as I'm trying to say the information as much as possible. And then from there, after we do a couple reps, I allow my staff to have a couple opportunities to start addressing what they are seeing, or if I happen to miss something that I didn't say myself. So that's kind of how we've been approaching it. Whereas I've been broad, speaking to everyone, and they've been to the individual people.
It's fantastic. I mean, really, that's kind of what we found in the music world. We haven't really like dove into the visual side yet. And it's really cool to hear a lot of the same things. We found a lot of things about like, consistent audio source and we had some trouble with mixing like audio and video, so counting one, two, three, four, both ways. There was a lot of just like random lag that people would get. So if they were focused on like only my hands and those froze, or only my voice and there was some lag there, like it was just kind of a nightmare. So it's interesting. I guess maybe not surprising that it's kind of the same. So you've got your staff. When you say like give feedback to your groups, are they doing that? Is that like a voice thing? Are they typing? Like what are they
That
repeating?
is a voice thing.
Cool.
Usually, I give them opportunity to just say, "Hey guys, I'm noticing this from some people," or whatnot. And then sometimes, if there's a specific thing that we don't want to call them out in front of everyone, they will just private message, "Hey, to this kid in this certain classroom, hey, make sure you're focusing on this." But mostly, they're just kind of noticing what they're seeing are the tendency of the issues
Right.
that they're just trying to address. And hey, I'm noticing, a lot of our shoulders are back. So
Right.
let's make sure we get them on top of the hips or something like that. Something that I'm probably not noticing as much because I'm just trying to keep everything, broad, getting the information out there. Then they're kind of doing the little nitty gritty details within that.
It's a lot to manage, like running a rehearsal like that. So
Mhm.
That's
because
cool.
I think it's also important too. The person who's ever facilitating the thing, it when you're in person, it's a lot easier to not be as detailed because you can do something and you can immediately see and fix it.
Hmm.
When you're online, you don't get to see everyone. You only get to see probably the first like 10 people, and you don't even know what those 10 people are, if they're your strong ones or your not strong ones. So it's very important that they're managing, almost having a great lesson plan before going into it, and making sure you're fully prepared. And then with having a plan B, because a lot of times something won't work, like the music
Right.
won't work or something weird is going to happen. And like,
Right.
that's the quickest thing where students become not engaged, is when those moments happen. You're trying to figure it out, you're scrambling, and then that's when they start to disengage and the cameras go off or things start to go a little bit weird.
And they're like staring off into the distance.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's good you have a staff there to kind of help cover some of those things too, just in terms of keeping the students engaged or whatever. That's cool. So you've been teaching visual programs for a while,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I know you and I think really similar in a lot of ways. Usually, every year before the season starts for me, I like have a sequence. I think everybody has their own sequence, and I alter it. I find I alter it a little bit every single year. Um, what's changed this year being in a virtual world? Like, what's changed either about your sequence or what you prioritize as you get started with a program? Like, what things are you finding that are a little bit different this year?
Well, fortunately, my priorities haven't changed. My priorities again have been posture and timing
Right.
throughout that. That is the number like one thing to me.
Right.
So that applies in anything that I can do here.
Hmm.
Sequencing is how things have changed a little bit. Are stuff like when you address about marching technique, about step size, or about field reading, or stuff like that. Those are the things that I've had to kind of adjust or kind of just not talk about as much. I try and talk about how
Right.
things will apply on a marching field, but a lot of those things don't really quite apply in the room, in their bedrooms, or outside in their backyards right now. And those are just kind of not unnecessary details, but for this moment they're a little bit unnecessary for me. Like, it doesn't make sense to talk to them about an 8 to 5. Like,
All
then I have to
right.
go and talk about what 8 to 5 is, and then a lot of them don't know what a yard line is yet. So a lot of that stuff, I just replace, instead of saying take an 8 to 5 step, I say take a strong first step. Make sure you're actually
Sure.
going somewhere. And then we can refine those details later on once we do have the opportunity to go onto a football field. So I kind of just adjust my vocabulary there a little bit, but I don't really have to adjust too much, thankfully, with my priorities and sequencing.
That's good. I mean, that's good. At the end of the day, the things that are important, like, are always going to be the things that are important for sure. That's cool. Do you play around with obviously not 8 to 5, 6 to 5, but do you play around with step sizes like larger steps, smaller steps? Do you find yourself doing that at all? Or is that just something you're not
Um,
really looking at?
no, honestly, I haven't. What I've been focusing on is the energy from direction changes or from effort changes. Again, like the difference in step sizes, I can refine that later. I feel like that's pretty easy. Within the technique, I teach a straight leg.
Hmm.
I never call it straight leg. I call it low heel, high toe. So whether you're
Cool.
taking a long extended step size or a small, the technique should still remain the same. The heels will be low, the toes will be high. So it doesn't make too much sense. I mean, it would when we're on a field to really work
Sure.
on the step size changes, but really the effort from going from forwards to backwards or forwards to the left, that's what's important, making sure that we have good posture through it, we're staying lifted, and also that we're in time on 1 and 2. Those are the things that I'm really focused on as we're doing stuff in the virtual classroom type aspects.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. That's great. I love it. That's really cool. I've talked to a lot of band directors trying to just have some sort of creative problem solving. Another thing I hear from band directors weekly is talking about student engagement,
Mhm.
um, or focus, whatever you want to call that. The ability to just retain information in an online platform. I've heard a lot of things that band directors say don't work. What has worked for you in terms of keeping students engaged? What techniques do you use?
Yeah, so music has been a huge thing.
Right.
Um, So making sure you're connected and knowing your students and what music they like to listen to, what music that they enjoy. So a lot of times, if I'm doing an up four or down four sequence or marching forward for eight, playing music that they are going to connect with. If that
Yeah.
means something that I don't like listening to, I'll play it because that's what they're going to connect with. Something that will help them understand tempo. Making sure that you're prepared and having a plan B. That's something that helps when, because things will go wrong. It's inevitable. Technology, that's what happens. So making sure that you're strong, having a plan B, and you have someone who is prepared to take over if something happens to you. Because the second something that goes wrong, that's the second students become disengaged, and it's not your fault for being underprepared or anything. That's not what it means. That's just how I think it is in the online platform. Is just that it's quick to lose their attention if it's not prepared. So that's kind of helped me, is making sure that everyone on the staff is prepared. Myself is prepared with a plan A, plan B, plan C, and you're just ready to go.
That's great. That's
A
great.
few other things to get people on. Actually, has been some cool things that we've done. We've done, so like on Zoom, we do contests like coolest background contest. Who can create the coolest background? Something simple as that. Or we'll have spirit days where it's like everyone wear Hawaiian clothes, and everyone that helps get people on there. And generally, when people are on and they're participating in those types of things, we have great um, participation. They don't have the cameras off or whatever. They're participating when you have those fun little spirit days, something small like that, just to get them incentivized to come. We had a family day one time that was pretty cool, where they brought siblings or a parent and stuff like that. That was pretty fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. You you said you have a group of staff that you work with, you
Mhm.
know, kind of all the time. Are you all, I mean, what's the relationship like? Is that, are you all meeting, you know, before rehearsal starts to go through a plan? Are you sending that out? Like, how
Yeah.
do you work with that group?
So we constantly communicate through GroupMe.
Hmm.
So we're messaging each other back and forth about things that we liked well,
Yeah.
things that we think we need to improve upon, and then I just kind of send out a master schedule, if you will. Like we'll break down, like if it's an hour and a half, I'll just kind of break things down during that hour and a half, what the focus is and what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I kind of also ask for feedback if they want to adjust that, like, hey, this portion's too long, we're stretching for too long, or that's not enough stretch. And we'll kind of go through that and have constant communication through that app right there.
Cool. Cool. I mean, it sounds like probably a long working relationship makes that process.
Yeah, we've worked together for like 4 years, so we understand each other on that a little bit. It's been a little bit of more of an adjustment on the online platform because we've had our consistent staff,
Yeah.
our consistent schedule. So we've had to push and pull things a little bit because
Right.
it takes a little bit longer to talk about stretching online because we talk about the different muscle groups versus in person. It's easier to show it a little bit more with different camera angles, but in PT that's easy to do online. So
Right.
it just
Right.
depends on what it is you're doing. So it's just little adjustments there on different things. That's in person, you don't need as much time, but online, you need more.
Right. No kidding. Um, this is a little off topic, but I'm just curious because I haven't really talked to a lot of people who do kind of the same thing that I do. Um, what was it like for you as this whole shutdown got started? Because I know for me it was kind of this chaotic, like, what's gonna happen? Like, what's this whole thing been like for you on a personal level?
Personally, it's been a little difficult at times, like trying to come into terms. Like I don't know, for example, like this year, I was really looking forward to like the specific senior class at this group that I teach at because I've been working with them. We started a junior high group kind of thing where they've been doing a junior high wins group, and that's the first year I got there was their first year here, so it was like this big graduating class that I've been looking forward to. And now we kind of have to adjust it, but it's
Right.
kind of had to put things in perspective for me about how much the activity means for me and how much it means for them as well. And so it's kind of like now I got to think about what I can do to keep this activity um, where I feel like it still could be or where it should be, and do what I can to salvage and make it what I know it is. If
Right.
that makes sense. But it's done a lot of good things. I've had to reevaluate how I do things, why I do things, and I feel like that's made me better because of it. So when we get back out there, I understand certain aspects of why I'm focused on this aspect in the marching technique or how I'm doing something, and I've had to evaluate, this is actually a more efficient way or a less efficient way.
Yeah, you just made me think about a lot of things. Like maybe there's some opportunity for things to be to be better because of this.
Hmm.
Maybe a shake up is actually in some ways a good thing for especially teachers who have been kind of doing the same thing for a while, the same whatever. I know on the drill writing side, like for me, I everything I wrote this year was socially distanced. Um, for the few groups that I have written for. And I think it's helped me a lot with some transitional things because it's a lot harder to do those transitions when you can't have like like a two-step pass through or something like that. Like um, it's been a lot for me just to sort of break down the elements of like what makes this work. How can we do that on a kind of a scaled out field? Everybody's taking up more of the field this year, so
That's been
oh,
hard for me drill writing, trying
yeah,
to keep everything spaced, but then it's like you're breaking a lot of your rules of like staging. It's like
right,
you you're going to now spread like a smaller band instead of keeping them in the 35s. You're going to spread them more towards the 30s, you
yeah,
know, if you're not stacking them vertically. So
right.
it's, well, I'm having to break a lot of my rules. Now, were these rules important because of X, Y, and Z, or is this actually something that is possible now for the future seasons?
Right.
You know?
I've kind of wondered that part specifically myself because a lot of the rules I started writing drill like almost 10 years ago is kind of when I got started actually writing for groups. And there were a lot of rules then that I kind of question now. Like I feel like programs are a lot better in terms of um, the knowledge of timing and where time comes from than they were probably like when I started writing. I never had the drum line very far from the back of the band. I found myself actually doing that a little bit more this year just because I've been kind of going a lot more vertical, like you said, with some of my groups. So I don't know. I kind of wonder if for some groups, if the training and the knowledge of what's going on in a field has like kind of rendered some of those rules like not obsolete, but if you can break those rules a little bit more now than maybe you could 10 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah, because our training could essentially be a little bit stronger on
Right.
those aspects. So yeah, that definitely makes me curious on that if that does help or hurt or
Right.
just more.
I always hear people from like those old school like 80s cadets groups talking about how like early on there were people who just like they were teaching them how to read music, and like we're I think for the most part people are well beyond that level of training now. So oh, that's interesting. Um, Let me think. What do you think about like we've talked about some of the opportunities to reevaluate, reassess kind of the way we're doing things? Is there anything else you think specifically will just be better in the future because of um, like your virtual training and the things that it's put you through? Like, what sort of things do you think you'll be better off in the future for because of what we're going through now?
Yeah, well, I think specifically, especially in Arizona, summer training can be looked at a little bit differently.
Yeah.
The way that we approach it, especially since it's so hot outside, I think it's still important that we have band camp. But a lot of times we do these in-person sectional things and stuff like that, or in-person visual things. I think we can look at how we approach the summer a little bit differently.
Hmm.
Maybe it can be online, or maybe we can start having some homework that's online materials or something like that. Because we're now learning that the groups that I'm still teaching is still getting better each
Yeah.
week coming back. There's still retention and stuff like that. So I feel like as it's in the summer, people are a little bit more busier. They want to enjoy their time away from school. So sometimes that can drain them out. So I kind of always thought doing this kind of brings light to maybe reevaluating what we do in the summer, specifically in Arizona, and how we can give a better opportunity for students who, want to be a part of the program, but just don't want to be there in
Right.
person so much, or maybe they're out of town, but they have time to attend a virtual class for only an hour. or something.
Right.
It's the kind of like the biggest thing that I've been seeing right now is the summer classes.
Right. So maybe a little bit more, yeah, of small get-togethers, not the huge chunks of
Yeah,
camps and things like
yeah,
that. But
like having some broken down sectional. So like I'm thinking like what I was been thinking of is like Mondays for saxophones, Tuesdays trumpets, and like having more individual attention
yeah,
and like your staff like online to be able to work with them. And you would have your music staff and your visual staff. They would have just like a half-hour half-hour music. That's just that section that day, the next day, and that would be like almost every week of the summer. I know it's a lot more work for the staff, but I mean me and my staff are always like finding more ways we want to be more involved, make them the best that they
right.
can. That's just us at least. But
I feel that. Well, I mean, that's cool. You think about the time investment you get in, a normal band camp that could theoretically kind of double the individual attention
mm,
before the summer's
where we
over.
get
So,
to in person and what's in person, then I feel like everyone's a lot more ready to go. You know, everyone's got the
right,
information. They may not have practiced it as well physically, but at least mentally they can approach it the way that you'd want them to approach it.
right. Kind of the difference between, regressing a little bit over the summer and like, getting just a little bit, kind of moving the needle just a little bit.
Helps them keep playing their instruments too, stuff like
Right.
that. You know,
That's cool. I like that a lot, especially here. This is my first full summer in Phoenix. It is brutal.
it
Oh
is.
my
This is
gosh.
also a very hot summer here. Like it's
Really?
yeah,
I just, oh my gosh. I had no idea. Like, I
yeah.
mean, not that it's particularly cool, in August, but yeah, just the never-ending
A
heat.
relentless above 110. I think we broke a record of how many days over 110.
Jeez. Yeah. I like walked out the other day. I was like, oh, it's really nice. And then it was like 103, like, because that's just how it is, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just total whatever. Um, cool, man. Well, this is really great. What are your thoughts on? Um, it sounds like you don't do a lot of like submitted recordings or things like that with your program necessarily. That it's a lot more like individualized in the moment feedback. Like, what are your thoughts for that as a visual tool? Um, just in general, like submitted recordings from students and things like that.
I think it's great to get them to practice.
Hmm.
Um, I think what the way that I would specifically use it is if they weren't able to get to the visual in person practices, that would be some option that I would use
Yeah.
just because I would want to keep the participation active when you're going live. And if like that was a way to avoid from doing a video, that's how I would use it, not through that way, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, I mean
But
that
I
makes
mean, I
makes
think it
sense.
would definitely work. It just also adds a lot of extra work from
Right.
having submitted videos, which is totally fine if that's the route that they want to go. I just, I don't know. Like when there's a group that I worked with where they made them send in specific just PT videos to make sure they're doing PT.
Mhm.
That kind of just doesn't sit well with me either. Just,
Sure.
I feel like if you want them to be doing PT, then just do it
Right.
with like I
Right.
understand that making them do it every day, but like if they're committed and they're wanting to, they'll do it for you. Otherwise, I feel like that's a way, especially for a new member. If you're forcing them to do things, you might lose that member.
Yeah. Right.
So like I want to make sure there's more of a cohesion, a community-based aspect rather than individual. So that's why I like the online integration, bringing it together. So it's more community felt rather than here's your homework, go do your thing, and then come back to us when you're ready. Because that's
Hmm.
how I feel like you can lose new members.
Right. Right. Yeah. Feels a little, especially with PT, feels a little like that could be micromanagey. Just
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
like even with marching too, like it doesn't have to be PT. Like say march, you go march 8, do your eights and fours,
Right.
then they're like, I still don't really, I still have questions on it. And
Right.
making a new member do that, I feel like that could push them away or it could bring them closer. I'm not going to say that I just would hate to lose a member because of that when they could have
Right.
been an in-person opportunity.
That's fair. I think I've noticed a lot of people saying that students have a lot more anxieties, I guess, about doing the actual submitted recordings versus just like show up and and do the thing.
Well, yeah,
It's
like
probably a different vibe.
The way I think about the submitted recordings too, like it's nice that you can take a recording and then stop and recording and stop. But like these
Right.
kids, they post on Instagram or Snapchat. They're used to taking a picture. Oh, that doesn't look good. Delete. Do it
Yeah.
again.
Right.
Delete. Do it again. And so it's good that you're building that practice of them. Stop. That doesn't look good. Do it again. But that does increase the anxiety, just like what you're talking about. And for a student that just doesn't have the abilities yet to execute whatever exercise you're asking them to do, can create anxiety for them or frustration and just want to leave. And that's more or less what I mean about them leaving. It's just if they don't have a clear understanding and you're asking them to do these homework assignments of something they're not quite ready or comfortable with yet,
Hmm.
that could deter them from coming back to your next session.
Makes a lot of sense. And this is the year. Just like make it work. Make students feel good about what they're doing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So no, that's great. Um, Mason, thanks for your time today, man. This is really cool. I think a lot of people want to do stuff like this, have visions for things like this. And it's been really cool hearing you talk about kind of your fleshed out vision, making it. I mean, what it sounds like to me is really what you do on a field, just adapted for, you
Yep.
know, adapted for online. If somebody's interested in reaching out to you, talking more about what's available to them, what you can do to help them out, where can they reach you?
Through my email. And my email is just mason.tanquary@gmail.com.
Cool.
Or find me on Facebook too. I'm totally fine with that.
That's great. We'll have that posted in the notes down below too. So if anybody's looking and they want to email Mason a little bit more about this, just go down below. I'll have your email there for people as well. Cool.
Awesome.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up here? Last words? Any big things that you want people to take away from this?
I guess the biggest thing is continue working on your visual instruction with your program. I know a lot of people are just like, we're just going to do music and we're going to do
Right.
practice rooms. And like music is essential, but visual is just as part of music. It's a different way of expressing yourself. It's called visual musicality for a reason, like
Mhm.
there's lots of benefits to trying to incorporate visual, even if you're not doing a show. Like you can still do some dance fundamentals or doing some stretches that just works on body parts. It's physically healthy, it's mentally healthy, and it's emotionally healthy for them as well. They've been probably sitting on their couches playing games, so at least getting up and doing something is in the right direction, even if they're not, marching on the field. So just keep doing whatever you can do to try and incorporate some sort of visual program with whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Well said. Thanks again, man. And for those of you watching, thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in with us. Again, Mason's emails below if you wanna check that out. And we will see you next time. Same time, same place.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.